Clint Cosgrove, Rivals national recruiting analyst, here with another Rivals national recruiting analyst, Eric Lammers. Eric, excited to do this with you again. Coach's Corner. This is our second episode. Today we're going to go over the spring eval period. Very important period during the recruiting process. It goes between April 15th and May 31st, and it's really a time for coaches to get out on the road. They get two evaluations of each prospect. And what I mean by that is they're supposed to gather information, academic information on one of those evaluations. And then on the other evaluation, it can be an athletic evaluation. They're not technically allowed to talk to the underclassmen, but, we know the bump rule, and we can talk about that and some things about that later, Lammers. But, it's basically the first time the coaches get to eyeball you on the road, evaluate you, find out about you. And it is a very important part of the process. It's also the first time for juniors that coaches can give you a phone call. They get one phone call during April 15th to May 31st. So that's just kind of the overview of it. But, Lammers, you've dealt with this extensively as a recruiting coordinator. What was your job and what was your communication going into the spring eval period with the coaches when they were on the road as you were setting up for it? Just how did that whole process work?
Yeah, so the spring eval period, is a little bit, different, obviously, from when the coaches are out on the road in December and January in that contact period, and they're a little more dialed in on exactly who they're going to try and see, right? They want to go see their top targets as they're looking to close them down prior to signing day. Now, January, actually, in reality, January is kind of turned almost into a little bit of an eval period, if you will, because so many dudes now are signing in December. When coaches go back out on the road in January, they're using that time almost as an area recruiting time or a time to go out and get information, gather information on the underclassmen and things like that. So it kind of gives them a leg up now leading into this period. What I'll say is, a lot of times, this period is a little more, I won't say not as planned out as well, but it is obviously these coaches are coming straight out of spring ball, right? And so for 4 weeks or whatever it is, spring ball is the only thing on their mind in terms of what they're planning from the day to day. And then bam, spring ball game, the spring game's done. And now they're going to go on the road for, 15, 16, 17 days over the course of 4, 5, 6 weeks, whatever it may be, right? Because as you said, you get 168 days, but when you boil that down really to the 10 assistants, you're talking 16, 17 days per coach. And it's always funny because the coaches that really want to be on the road, the ones that love, visiting schools, the ones that want to, love recruiting, they're fighting for that extra day, right? Whereas your coordinators are like, yeah, give me 10, 11, 12 days.
4 days.
Give it to the younger guys, let them go pound the pavement for a couple extra days or whatever it may be. But it's, get out there. You said it, the academic evaluation, athletic evaluation, kind of a joke a little bit how the NCAA tries to separate that. I mean, in reality, you're just going to see your targets. Is it area recruiting? Are you dominating through area recruiting, or are you doing some positional recruiting? I think a lot of that will come down to your head coach's philosophy, honestly, and what they want the coaches to be doing. We tried to have it as planned out as possible in terms of just knowing where the coaches were, because the biggest thing you can't have happen, obviously, you have to be mindful of the crossover that can happen. You don't want a coach to go burn a day seeing a kid when you couldn't even see him live. Maybe if that was the goal, you wanted to see that young man live, and they're not practicing that day. But then you needed, your coordinator to get to him later in the month. So there's just a lot of things you have to make sure you're mindful of the crossover and planning around the practice schedules and things like that when guys are able to have spring ball. That's really what you're looking at. But in large, you're really saying your coaches, you already know where your coaches are, their areas, right? Like, okay, so we have Florida. We have 5 coaches down in Florida. Think about that. We have 5 coaches covering the whole state of Florida, right? And so a lot of prospects down there. We only have 1 guy covering the state of Florida for Rivals, if you will, but we've got 5 coaches covering the state of Florida, right? And so you got South Florida, you've got Orlando, you've got Tampa, you've got the Panhandle, all these different places. And that those coaches are going to go down there for a day or two, and they're going to go ahead and hit the top schools, right? And so as the recruiting coordinator back in the office, what we are looking for them to do is go out there, the names that you need to go see if there's any other names that are out there that maybe Rivals or the other recruiting sites don't have. Get information on them, get height, weight, in particular, those underclassmen, all the head coaches are going to be hyping up their underclassmen as the next big thing, right? That you need to know about. Get those guys into your database. And that it's just a way to basically fill up your database. What we would have our coaches do is go through every night, send me back. Everybody sent me an email of what they did for that day, right? I went to this school. I went to St. Thomas Aquinas. I saw XYZ, right? I went to Cardinal Gibbons and I saw this player, this player, this player. Okay. All that stuff comes back to me. I put it all into one giant email, and then I dispersed it the next morning because Coach Mace was big on that. He wanted to see what everybody was doing. He wanted to see, just the names that were coming up. And it was a way for us as the in-office guys, in particular our GAs and our QCs, because we had them assigned to each coach, right? And so, like, if a coach sent back a bunch of names, all right, now go through all these names and start watching them, seeing them, and how, what film can we gather on them, what's there to know about them, and then get them in our system and keep that kind of going. So, big fat gathering trip, right? And so that's basically what this whole spring's all about.
When they sent you like their end of day reports, did they include tee times on there or anything like that?
Right. Yeah. I mean, obviously, some of these coaches are going to hit. It's realistic to think some of these coaches, maybe, especially if you're in a highly densely packed area, get 5, 6, 7 schools. Some of them get 8. They go crazy, right? But then you got those other guys, maybe a little bit longer in the tooth, that are going maybe 3, 4 schools, maybe. And then you're like, well, what the heck are they doing all day? I mean, I won't comment on that, but I'm sure some of these coaches know where they're going, and they're very familiar with their areas, and they know, the good golf courses in those regions for sure.
Yep. And then they'll schedule like a 5 a.m. tweet, up and on the grind, and then get up at 9 and go and get some breakfast. Got a lot of that going on too. But, there, like you said, there's guys who grind it out, and there's guys who, absolutely loathe going on the road. One of the crazy things, well, not crazy, but, we don't have spring football in the Midwest, at least. But they are allowed to do like workout periods and stuff. So, for instance, yesterday, one of a coach that I know in the area, he set it up, and they have multiple Division I prospects at Kenwood Academy. And so I go over there for that. And I mean, half the Big Ten's there. I talked to coaches from Michigan, Ohio State, Nebraska. Cincinnati was there, a bunch of MAC schools. So that's been an interesting part of it, because really before, I feel like, when the coaches were on the road, you kind of had to plan around, spring practice or, office hours and stuff like that. And now, the schools that are doing it right, they're like showcasing their kids at a certain time and trying to get as many coaches there as possible. So
you really have to do that. And it's kind of, I mean, this whole period, they call it an evaluation period, right? The athletic evaluation period, right? And unfortunately, those schools that don't have spring ball are at a little bit of a disadvantage, because I mean, it's one thing to be able to go and size a kid up, right? That's great. Now, granted, you talked about it in the intro. You're not allowed to talk to them, right? You're allowed to say, hello, my name's Coach Lammers. I'm with Vanderbilt. Good to meet you. Boom, keep it moving. Now,
only if you accidentally see them, though, right?
Right. Coaches are not supposed to pull them out of. Coaches are not supposed to pull them out of class and this and that. Like, it's a little bit of a disadvantage. It's a little bit of a, what are we? I mean, really, is this really what we're doing, right? NCAA, but obviously down in the South where spring ball is, big time. Obviously, that's a big part of college coaches and scheduling their visits for this time of the year. But you have to, man. Like but the high school coach doesn't care about the NCAA rules, really.
No.
Nor should they, really. It's their job to get these young men recruited. It's a part of their job, to get these young men recruited. And so if the coach from Michigan or the coach from University of Florida shows up at this time and there's not anything going on, right? I'm sorry, they're going to go pull that kid out of the school. I mean, let's be really honest about what's going on here, right? Or they're out of class, sorry. Now, what happens after that? I mean, it can be left up for interpretation, but the NCAA tries to put the fear of God into all these people. And obviously people get caught. The coaches get caught from time to time. Again, they put the fear of God into you, but it's very hard, obviously, to be covering every single school across the country as all these coaches go through. And so it's kind of you're on your own honor, like, right. So, but it's an interesting time of the year for sure.
Yeah, it is. It's funny because, like, in the coaching world, there's kind of a code where you don't snitch, you don't talk about this stuff, unless it's like a heated rivalry with somebody who you really don't like. But, there's times I remember when I'd be on the road recruiting, you walk in and see a coach, a big time coach, literally sitting down in a room by themselves with a player.
Right.
And it's like, they see you, you see them, and it's just like, hey, have a good day. Talk to you later. See you later.
It is basically, it's like a bro code, right? Everybody's got the bro code that they abide by. But I mean, and I'll tell you this, I'm not so sure that, not everybody's doing it a little bit right now. Is there certain coaches that aren't doing it? Sure. I think there are certain coaches that definitely stick to it, right?
Yep.
Is every staff in America have one guy on there that's probably tiptoed the line a little bit and sat down with the young man? Yeah. I mean, we had a coach walk into a local school one time, walked in there, wanted to see one of our top targets. He was a junior. Can't see him. Can't get to him. Where's he at? Well, he's in the room with the room with X school, that one of our competitors. And I was pretty mad about that, right? Because I'm like, come on, we're trying to do this right. And one of our competitors has them kind of locked up on us. And it is what it is. I mean, like I said, I don't know. Maybe one of our coaches had done that from time to time. We had a coach that got busted, right, a while back, and he ended up losing his job at Vanderbilt, right? And that's part of it, and that's the fear of the guy that they'll put you in you. The NCAA will put in you. You get caught on camera or somebody rats you out, right? But for the most part, what I would say is loose lips sink ships, right? And so people keep it pretty tightly wound, and it should be that way. I mean, as mad as I was that our competitor had them in there, I was not going to go. I would never go bring that up to anybody else in compliance or anything like that, right? Because it's just the way. I mean, it's the way it is, man. And most of us think that the rules. I mean, because my problem with it really is I don't really have a problem with it. I think you should be able to. Right?
No question.
My problem is if we're able to offer these kids, I'm able to text this kid, I'm able to DM this kid, I'm able to talk to him on the phone. But when I go travel 500 miles, I can't talk to him at this point of the year because the NCAA tells me I can't. It just seems pretty foolish because if I'm really, truly evaluating this young man, what better way to do that than an in-person interaction, in April or in May when I'm in that environment? Now, you could say, well, they can get on your campus and this and that, and you can talk to them, but that's not feasible all the time, right?
Nope.
So rather than waiting until December when I have to have this information and find this out, maybe there's something that comes up in that conversation and I'm not vibing with that kid or that kid's not vibing with me, and we can figure that out in April rather than waiting until late fall to figure that out or something. I mean,
yeah. And spending all that time on a kid that really isn't going to be a fit for you and probably isn't interested in you because they aren't a fit for you. And so there's so much time that, you got to spend on other things as well. The one thing that you touched on, and I talk about kind of, the coach's bro code, but like if your top kid is sitting down with a top competitor, that's kind of the time I feel like when sometimes there's an anonymous email that does go to the NCAA. But what happens is that coach knows who saw them in there. And then all of a sudden it becomes a back and forth thing and they're looking to get you on something. And so a lot of people, play it safe from that standpoint.
Right. Yeah, exactly. What skeletons do we have in our closet too? Right. Like, I don't necessarily want to you to start looking at us differently or something. Yeah. Cause I tell on you, then you tell on us for something. And then now, God, we're down a rabbit hole here. And we've got a lot of skeletons coming out. Cause again, it's there's not a perfect science to any of this and people, and again, livelihoods are on the line, jobs are on the line, especially considering it goes back to our conversation last week, right? About the pressure that some of these assistant coaches are under, to establish these relationships, to find these kids, to get them on their campus. And so you go out during this time period and you're seeing some of your top targets, right? I mean, the head coach wants you to get that guy, man. Your job's on the line, your livelihood's on the line. I mean, it is what it is at times.
And your competitor is developing that relationship.
Exactly.
So it's a catch-22. And I think the NCAA rules set it up for some shadiness and set it up to not be successful.
Right. Yeah, that's why I think we saw that. We had that they're about to turn the college football on its head, right, or something like that, because they're going to throw some new rules in there, and then it starts with the changeover in 2023 at the NCAA and different things like that with the president or whatever, and But yeah, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. I mean, there's a lot, man. But who's going to be involved with those conversations with the NCAA? Who's having those conversations with them, talking to them about it? Is it guys that are actually, involved with it every day? Or is it people from college programs that can actually tell them, hey, this is really what's happening? I don't know if you guys really know what's going on out there, right? Like, what am I supposed to do when I walk into a gym at a high school and coach just has his whole team lined up and expecting me to, go and talk to
Turn
him?
the other way.
I'm just going to be rude. I'm going to walk out, say, dude, I'm out of here. I can't do this. NCAA says, you can't do this.
Nope. That's funny because every other coach had no problem with it. I was trying to help you. And then you burn a bridge with that high school as well. It's like, we weren't good enough. So, I mean, there's all kinds of stuff. And then one of the things you talk about with the changes in the NCAA rules, they're talking about going unlimited coaching staffs. So there's guys in college football, as we all know, that can't coach a lick of football, but are great recruiters and will always have a job because talent is what wins. And you need talent to win. And so I'm interested to see how many of these schools, since all these guys can be counters as guys who can go on the road if it's unlimited coaches, will hire just a recruiting team to just go out and all they have to do is recruit. And some of these guys, they love it. That's what they want to do. So I think it'd be really interesting to see what happens with all of that. And obviously not all the schools have resources to hire unlimited staff. So it's going to be a big, a larger divide between the haves and have-nots. One thing I did want to ask you about, because I'm seeing this a lot, and it's probably different at Vanderbilt just because it's Vanderbilt and private and academic standards and all this, but you're seeing coaches on the road right now that just go out and they're like offering a kid at every school that they go to. And half the time you're like, there's no way. That's not a committable offer. Now, did you guys have like an approval process? Could a coach just go and be like, I like this kid, I'm going to offer him? Or did they have free reign? Could they go cowboy on you?
Yeah, it's a great question. And what I'll say to that, and it's not necessarily my philosophy to it either. Like I struggle with this one a little bit. I think too many offers go out. I think that too many offers go out in general, and it muddies the waters. Communication, it is not, it's very hard to communicate when you offer 400 kids, or that's ultimately the number you end up at, right? It's very hard to, communicate with that many kids exactly what's going on, and kids don't really understand it because, Jimmy was offered when he was a sophomore or he was a freshman because the coach was out on the road and just threw it out. What I would say, what our process was, if it was a rising junior, right? So this year it's a 2023 kid, and the coach wants to offer him out of the blue. We didn't know anything about this young man. It would need an approval process. It would have to go through the coordinators. The film would have to be evaluated. We'd have to evaluate the transcripts, and things like that. Now, if it's a 24 kid or a 25 kid, and the coach is like, back to what I said earlier, next big thing, coach, he's going to blow up. He's going to have everybody. And that recruiter's in that school, and he's got this relationship with this coach, or he's trying to establish himself in that area, right? Like he wants to, be known in that area by these coaches and this and that. Vanderbilt does right by these kids or whatever it may be. He had free reign. If he felt like he could offer that kid, or he should offer that kid, offer that kid. Now, did I personally agree with that necessarily? Not necessarily, because again, it just muddies the waters, right? And I don't necessarily love the idea of offering a 2025 kid, right? And it was a different class, obviously, when it was at Vanderbilt, but I don't necessarily love offering a freshman in high school because so much can change. And you can't communicate with that kid. Like you literally can't communicate with that kid. Like I can't talk to that kid on Twitter. I can't talk to that kid via text messages. The only thing you can do is if that kid calls in and catches you at the right time, you can talk to him on the phone. That's it.
Yep.
And I just think that's just, there's now, granted, is there one or two kids that are in that 2025 class or that are freshmen right now that are going to blow up and be freaking dynamite, be awesome? Yeah. But there's also those kids that are in that 2025 class that are going to be, all hype right now and are going to flame out, and you offered them, and then you still got to answer for that, down the road, what's the answer then? Yeah, that offer, you can't commit anymore. Son.
Yeah. Or just ignore them.
Yeah, ignore them. And so that's bad business all the way around. And so I struggle with that a little bit of offering kids that young. That if I was being blunt, I would tell the NCAA that's probably where you should look at curbing something a little bit. Like maybe only can offer juniors and seniors or something like that. I don't know. Maybe that's not a good idea. People would probably tell me that's a terrible idea. And I probably could talk myself into why that's a terrible idea. But like, there's something to like being able to not talk to kids, but yet offer them. And you can't really even, and they're freshmen. Like so much can change. It's just kind of, it's wild.
Well, you talk about clouding it. I remember at a school I was at, like, we'd watch the film when we were sitting down during our recruiting meetings and deciding who we were going to offer, right? And so we'd watch him and be like, yeah, he's a wait and see guy. And then we would pull up his offer list and we'd be like, kid's got 12 offers, 6 from our conference. He can't be a wait and see guy. If we want to stay in it, we got to offer him whether we want him or not, just in case we need him in the end.
Right.
So that feeds into that. That kid might have gotten those offers when they were 25, 24. None of those are takes for him. And then he's getting more offers because of it. Right. And nobody's communicating with the kid because they're not allowed to, nor do they probably want to if they're not ready to take them. So
how many of those offers, and also how many of those offers those guys get when they're younger are favor offers, right?
No question.
Yeah, I know the guy's trainer. I know the guy, 7-on-7. Here, throw the kid enough. I mean, it happens. Like that's the reality of this business. It happens. But then you look up 2 years later, and that kid's not got picked up any offers since then. But then you're like, well, you wait and see, like you said. But you can't wait and see, coach. He's already got all these offers. But does he really? Really?
Well, no, and it can be sad too because the kids aren't. Nobody explains the recruiting process to them.
Bingo.
The coaches don't even know how it works half the time. They know what they can and can't do, but they don't know the logistics behind it. And, they might throw out an offer, not even remember it, and then get a call like 2 days before signing day and be like, coach, I think your school is the place for me. Yeah. And it's like, son, we haven't talked in 2 years. Right. We don't have a spot for you. And the kid's got nothing. Like,
word of advice, if you received an offer, right, as a freshman or a sophomore from anybody, and in September 1 of your junior year hits and you don't hear from that school, probably go ahead and just assume that you don't have an offer from them anymore, right? Because like that's not going to be missed, right? They know who you're when you target that list, and mind you, that list is huge. Like it's 100, like for us, it was like 140, 150 juniors, right, on September 1st that we're going to hit with contact. But if one of those kids is not on that list that we supposedly offered back when he was a freshman and we're not going to contact him on this day, probably means don't call and try to commit, son. And it's not, probably not going to go that way. But that's not even the prospect's fault, in my opinion.
No, it's not at all. It's not communicated to them.
That's why you should never have done it. You just should have never done it, in my opinion, right? It comes back to that coach that felt like he had to offer that freshman because this, that, or whatever reason. It's like, just don't do it, man. We didn't need to do that.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, there's certain exceptions that the guy's already a big time guy. You know for sure, like even if he didn't develop anymore, he's already a take for you. So there are those exceptions, but those kids are going to come into they're going to be in contact with these teams throughout the whole time. If you get an offer as a freshman, don't hear from the school ever again.
And those kids that you were talking about that are already developed, that are freshmen or whatever, and they look like freak daddies.
Yep.
Probably going to end up at maybe one of 5 schools, right?
Exactly.
Georgia, Clemson. I mean, it's kind of what it is, right? And it is what it is. But I don't know. So it's the whole process. We could literally sit here and dive into the whole thing about how it's kind of crazy. And in the end, I think that the prospects are really the ones that are kind of, they get yanked around, and it's not really necessarily, it's not right for sure.
How about this? I'll start with one, but and we won't name any names, bro code, coach code, but stories from the road or stories about, contacting kids when you can't and stuff. I'm going to go with one from a big college, a guy I worked with. They would have their weekly recruiting meetings, and it would go, because, these big schools, they're already on to like 3 classes down, and he would go around the room, and each coach had to talk about the contact they had with the sophomores at that time, that week, what their communication was, how much they communicated, and they better have communicated if it was a top target for them. But that's not allowed. And they'd get their butts ripped if they didn't have something. So now there are legal ways to do it. I can call the head coach and have the kid call me. But even at that point, are you even allowed to DM or anything like that? You can't do that till September 1st, correct?
Right.
So
it's all it all has to go through the like you said, the coach, which the miracle pill that you often hear is, well, the kid's dad's a coach on the staff, right? Or something like that. There's always the kid's got a dad that's a coach on the staff. And so that I can always contact him. I can always communicate with him pretty directly. Cha-ching. Like it's weird how that works, but that's kind of always the magic pill that you hear or whatever. But yeah. So what happened then? Wait, keep going.
No, I mean, that's just like some of the stuff that goes on. That's coming from
say what they were doing,
pressuring them to do something that they're technically not allowed to do, and their job is on the line if they don't do it.
Right.
And here's what happens: half the time, coaches are just going to make something up. You know, it's like, what's the point of it all? But give me a story from the road. I'm sure you got some good ones.
I'm sure I could, dig through. The one thing that stuck out to me, I was thinking about this today, because we had one coach, a little bit older, probably one of those guys that was getting the tea times. And I told you they had to send in their list every day, right? Or what they did, what they accomplished, like who they saw, and this and that, right? And so finally, we started getting a little bit suspicious of these lists that were coming in from the coach. And we're like, dude, I'm pretty sure that he's just looking up on the rivals what the school has, what their stars, the offers they have, and that's all he's sending. Because like, as some coaches are like writing in, and they're like, such and such name is, he's fluid, he's got this going on. He recently visited X school, right? Well, this coach, all he says is Jimmy, 3 stars. He's got Bowling Green, Michigan State, whatever. That's it. And I was like, Coach, I literally could have just went to the kid's rivals page and pulled that off. I'm pretty sure that's what
great eval.
And hit the golf course as well. So I mean that would be one thing that I think was a story from that. But I don't know. I mean, I'm sure we had a coach that he was down in Texas, and he had his book bag in his car, and it got stolen out of there, and so he was now without all of his his laptop, all of his recruiting sheets and everything like that. And so he was a little bit in limbo down there. Thankfully, he was very self-sufficient and able to figure that out. Not all coaches are when they get out on the road. But he was able to figure that on his own. But yeah, dude, I mean, you hear a lot of stories. I mean, think about this though. These coaches, they all know each other, right? And so they get together and they go to these places and they're out on their own. I mean, they're literally finally, they just got done. The spring ball grind is over. They're in South Florida, or they're in Atlanta, or they're wherever. And let's just say, obviously, they like to have a good time at night. I'm too sure, at night. So, I mean, I don't know all those stories, nor would I ever divulge them. But yeah, there's certainly some stories out there too that you can imagine. But
yeah. Well,
I think time for us too. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. When spring ball is awesome, or not spring ball, but the spring eval period is awesome, because for us back in the office right now, it's like coaches are gone. Like, what do we do? We'd be noon hoops. We'd be playing basketball for 2 hours a day, Monday, Tuesday, Friday, or Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And then Tuesday, Thursday, we're playing, what's that game where you throw the Frisbee around? Like, it's like football, but you're throwing the Frisbee.
Oh, Ultimate Frisbee.
Ultimate Frisbee. So we're out there playing Ultimate Frisbee. I'm getting the most cardio I get all year is during April and May. And we're just living life. Coach calls up, hey, I need this and this. Okay. And then you give it to him, and then you're back out there hooping. I mean, it was perfect. I mean,
it was the best, because it's just like you got done with that spring grind, and especially as a GA, like I remember as a GA, we would bring in a game of Monopoly the second that the coaches hit the road. So we could be like in the office, be able to pull up anything they needed at any point. But that was our kind of rest. That was our R&R time.
Now the head coach is obviously still in the building, right?
Because they can't go on the road anymore during
on the road, right? And so this is when they get a little bored themselves and they start coming up with some crazy ideas and we need to be doing this, we need to be doing that. And you're like, all right, coach, let's do it. And because their minds are always spinning and it's just you and them at this point. So you have a lot of good quality time with the head coach, no doubt. And they get bored while they're sitting there for sure.
Oh yeah, some of them, they'll be like, "Hey, I got some high-level meetings," and they'll shut their door, and you don't see them for the whole day, and probably sleeping, or sometimes you look out and their car isn't there. So there was always someone on car watch. I remember to know if the admin was in the building when you're a young guy, and you kind of get some of that free time. But I'm sure, and in the future we should just crazy, funny, recruiting stories from the road, from the office. I'm sure people would love to hear that.
Sure.
I think we covered most of, spring eval, at least gave a couple different views, perspectives, an outline of what it is, what really goes on versus what's supposed to go on. But I'd like to maybe preview what we have coming up. And that is, in our next episodes, we are going to have, I believe, 2. Has your guy gotten compliance clearance yet?
Supposed to talk to him the other day, right? But supposed to have some clarity coming. Compliance office been busy with some other things going on, but they just want to make sure that they don't get on here and we don't start roasting them about everything and asking them a bunch of questions that they don't want answered. But I promised them that would not be what happens. But,
we would never do that.
This is what so hopefully, we should have a couple guests coming up too. That'd be and right in the mix of all this, right, with the spring ball I keep calling it spring eval will be great because obviously they'll be able to provide some of their perspective and they're, like you said, share some stories that they have because everybody's from this time of the year, everybody's got some good ones and they can talk and it'll be good.
For sure. My guy, a Big Ten director of recruiting, he did get his approval yesterday. So we'll have him on for sure. So look forward to that, guys. Please subscribe to our Coaches Corner. This is just starting and it's only going to get better. We're going to show you a side of recruiting, give you a perspective that really is kind of kept behind a curtain. And, not only for entertainment value, but and obviously with the best intentions possible. And we're not here to expose anything or anything like that, but just give you a real view of what goes on. And I think it helps everybody involved when they know the truth of the recruiting game. So, we look forward to continue doing this, Lammers. And you have any parting thoughts?
No, not really. I'm ready for the draft. You've been noticing, you didn't even talk about my shirt, right? I'm rocking Cleveland. This is usually our Super Bowl, the time of the year when we're getting jacked up for the draft. But, we don't have –
For your first pick.
We don't have a first-round pick this year. But, I love the draft more. It's usually my favorite time of the year is the draft just because when I was younger, me and my buddies would get together. We'd eat pizza, throw back some old, sodas, and things like that. And but I enjoy the draft. So I'm really looking forward to it. This weekend, and so go Browns.
Go Browns, I guess. You got a new quarterback. You usually have a top 5 pick, so I'm sorry you don't get that this year.
Things are changing.
Yeah, no, they've definitely done a great job. So it'll be interesting to see how the draft goes. It's fun because a lot of these guys getting drafted this year, like I think of like Jamison Williams, I've known them since they're young. And so it's a lot of fun.
I think that means you're getting old.
Yeah. Can't you tell by the gray beard?
Yeah.
Yeah. At least it takes some of the ginger away. But all right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Eric Lammers, Clint Cosgrove, Coach's Corner, and we'll be seeing you soon.